So Apple's keynote came in at a little over 2 hours, and they spent a lot of time talking about slow fees and showing Frogger fighting babies, but there's a lot of features in the iPhone 11 and the iPhone 11 Pro line that they didn't talk about. So let me show you some hidden features that might help you decide which phone, if any, you want to get. Really the big update this year, aside from color, is two things. It's battery and it's camera. So let's start with cameras. So portrait mode on the Pros is about to get a giant dose of steroids. So portrait mode will work on the wide angle and telephoto, but it will not work on the ultra wide. It's actually using the ultra wide for depth sensing. So you now got the option for both of those to get your portrait on. And on the 11, since it only has the wide and the telephoto, both of those will work with portrait mode, and they'll work with anything, not just faces. So in our XS final review, I talked about how I thought the front-facing camera was bit of a garbage camera. Well, it's been updated here obviously on the 11 and the 11 Pro, and if you shoot a lot of video using that front-facing camera, it might be a reason to consider an upgrade. The frame rates now are vastly improved. You can shoot at 4K at 24, 30, or 60 using their front-facing camera. During the keynote, Apple was showing off the wide-angle front-facing camera, but they showed you having to turn it horizontal in order to get that full wide angle. When you actually hold the phone in vertical, there'll be an option to give you that wide angle. Obviously, it won't be as wide, but it'll be wider than a traditional normal sensor. Apple mentioned the name Auto Adjust on stage. They didn't really talk about what it was. So I did the research on what this auto adjust feature is going to do, and it should work on the 11 and the 11 Pro. Essentially when you're taking a picture just in sort of the normal lens, and you have this option turned on, maybe you've got a group of people and one person would be cut out. It'll actually will take a picture using an ultra wide sensor, and using machine learning will know that person got cut out. When you look at the final image, it will add that person back in. So you kind of get the ultra wide shot without ever actually having ultra wide set up. Night mode is something that is long overdue to the iPhone lineup. It's nice that it's there. It's not a separate mode you have to automatically go to. Apple will know it's dark out and switch to night mode for you. But I was watching my friend John Morrison's video, and there's an interesting hidden feature that Apple didn't talk about. So it will detect when the phone is steady. So if you've got it on a tripod or leaning up against something, for example, it'll give you the option to change exposure time of at least 10 seconds, giving you an obviously better night shot than if you were holding the phone steady. While that long exposure is obviously good for low light settings like night mode, you can also use it across the camera in any light situation that you want. And speaking of night mode, one hidden feature that's so hidden, you're not gonna find it anywhere on the phones, night mode on the front-facing cameras. It's not on the iPhone 11s. Something else that's new to the iPhones is audio zoom. We've seen it on Samsung's and other Android devices, but what that means if you're recording a conversation or people talking and you zoom in on one person, it'll focus the microphones on that person that's talking, presumably getting you more focused audio. So the cameras aren't the only thing getting an injection of improvements. The display is also here. And Apple did talk briefly about what the Pro models can do with HDR, but I'm gonna explain it a little better than they did. So with the previous phones, so the XS and the XS Max, the phones technically played back HDR content, but didn't adjust the brightness or the color at all, just kind of played it back like any other content. Now though, when it plays back HDR, the phone will switch to proper HDR10 or Dolby Vision approved color profiles to actually get that better looking picture, as opposed to just playing the better looking source without looking any better to your eyeballs. So that same display is also way brighter now. It's 1200 nits of peak brightness and then 800 for normal use, which is up from 1000 and 625 on the XS and the XS Max. And last, that same display is now 15% more battery efficient, which brings us nicely to our next category. So obviously the internals of the phones got an upgrade. You got the A13 up from the A12, all that stuff you'd expect. But what I didn't expect from Apple was for them to step back from the thinner, lighter wars we've seen kind of all phone manufacturers take part in and deliver a phone that is taller, wider, and heavier than before, but all for good reason, giving us way improved battery life. So software improvements certainly give you that extra 4 to 5-ish hours on the Pro line, and an extra hour on the iPhone 11, but the battery capacity themselves are also improved. So Gigabit Lte is here, and that was on the XS and the XS Max, but it was missing from the XR. It's making its big flexy fast debut though on the iPhone 11. So whatever iPhone you buy will have Gigabit Lte. And I could talk a lot about how it's kind of the backbone for the fallback on 5G, but just know theoretically you'll get faster data speeds. And speaking of faster data speeds, Wi-Fi 6, something they just showed up on a slide but didn't talk much about. Wi-Fi 6 is potentially a really big deal. So obviously if you're on a router that's Wi-Fi 6 compatible, you can get speeds that are up to 40% faster than AC, what we've got right now. But what I'm most excited about is better Wi-Fi at stadiums or crowded events. You've been to a sporting event, let's say you're at a Rams game, for example, and you can't send a tweet showing Jared Goff throwing that touchdown to Brandon Cooks. Now with Wi-Fi 6, hopefully you'll be able to, assuming that stadium, has Wi-Fi 6 around. There's a lot of new stuff in the iPhone 11 line of phones. I wanted to share them with you, and maybe you guys can decide whether or not you want to upgrade, not want to upgrade, switch to Android, or maybe not do this gen altogether. Let us know in the comments down below though if there's one hidden feature you are most excited about. I think for me, and this is kind of a silly one, I'm pretty stoked about Wi-Fi 6. The faster data, the more useful a phone. I think battery life though is also a gigantic one. Hope you guys enjoy. Happy iPhone ordering.